Good evening, everyone here at the Investing Stuff You Should Know podcast. We have a great guest with us today. He is Flint Jamison. He is a mechanical engineer, or was a mechanical engineer. Maybe he still is. He can elaborate on those things. And also, I am a mechanical engineer, so there's a little bit of commonality there. He's into syndication. He's started a fund, and we're pretty excited to have him participate and share all the knowledge and the things he's learned and is doing. And thank you, James, Flint, for being with us here today.
Yeah, great to be here. We'll have to dive into the engineering world a little bit. I guess I can go first. So mechanical engineer, I went into aerospace. I designed the Boeing 787 for a good decade.
Wow, man.
And then, yeah.
such an iconic aircraft and so much, so well known and so much publicity around it. I love that thing.
Yes.
I love that aircraft.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just flew on it 2 weeks ago and I just absolutely love it. And you're right. I think a lot of people like it because, I mean, it's got the cool windows. It's quieter, lower cabin altitude. I could go into all the sales points on that, but I was an engineer. I did the wing. And it's exciting to look out at the
left wing, the left wing or the right wing.
Both. Yes.
Okay.
Specifically wing leading edge for those engineers out there. It was both the fixed and movable, everything in front of the forward spar, if you know what I'm talking about.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got my MBA, looking for the next thing. And here I am as a program manager. Now I'm managing a large aircraft modification program. Basically, we design and modify aircraft for the Department of Defense. So let's talk about that just really quick. So that's like a huge thing because like we have these legacy aircraft right across the U.S. fleet. And they need, they're like 40, 50, 60, maybe, obviously many years. And so that's a huge cost savings, right? Versus a ground up, just a blue sheet like the 787 was, for comparison. Yes, absolutely. Oh man, we could go down this rabbit hole so far. But yes, so there's not only just modifying existing aircraft like C-130s, we get those all the time and we just add new capabilities, whether it's a new radio and antenna or some other stuff. But and then we take standard biz jets or small turboprop aircraft meant for general aviation, and we'll basically make them do cool things. So
awesome.
Yeah,
what's the difference? Well, we're going to bridge the gap right now between real estate and the engineering space. Yeah. What do you think is the difference between, and why can you do it on an old aircraft versus like a building where eventually you have to tear it down and redo it? Like what's the similarities or the differences there? Just because it's so expensive, or because you're like, how does that work? Tell us how Flint's mind works there.
Interesting. I haven't put this metaphor together, but I think I can do it on the fly.
So I trust you. You can do it.
Yeah. So we've actually taken aircraft out of the boneyard because they're cheap. Literally they've gone full useful cycle, but they're still usable. So we can pull them out of the boneyard. We can go through a heavy maintenance check, make sure that they're still structurally sound. We might put a new engine on it. And then from there, we put the new capabilities on for Department of Defense and send it on its way. So that's it's a very low cost aircraft. Doing ground up designs of aircraft is obviously a major undertaking because you have to design a clean sheet aircraft versus just putting a new radio and antenna on an existing aircraft, right? I'm kind of oversimplifying it, but that's the gist of it.
Yes.
And then, yes, for real estate, we do that exact same thing. We buy an apartment building that's, say, built in the 80s and it hasn't been updated. It's got lower rents. It's got a mom and pop owner and the rents are very low. It's got a lot of legs left in it. We can go in there and renovate. It's like flipping a house. We flip apartments over a 5-year period with tenants in place, doing a unit at a time or 10 units at a time. So it's the same thing. We refresh the property and raise rents and get the revenue up, and then the property value skyrockets and investors are happy, tenants are happy because we got rid of their 80s decor and put in new hard surfaces.
Nice. And do you think the cost basis of an aircraft versus a building is, I think, completely different economics, Flint? Would you say that?
Yes, I I would struggle to wrap my head around that one, I think.
Okay. Yeah. We'll leave that. We'll put that one to bed. We'll just continue on here. So, all right. So you've obviously you're pedigreed engineer. You're running some major programs here for, obviously Boeing and now the government here. But then concurrently, you're doing obviously real estate, and you have a fund, something that relevant to me, relevant to my audience. Did you guys commence with syndication? Did you not?
Did you mention fund? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So So you start. So did you start with syndication and then step into fund, or did you just kick right from the get go with the fund model?
No. Well, let's back up the story a little bit. Where most people get in real estate, I kind of want to hit this point because
Please.
I think a lot of people want to get into real estate and they realize, well, that means I have to go buy a single family home, and then I have to be a landlord, and that takes a lot of capital. There's a lot of work involved, and yes, that is very true. I did that. I bought a duplex. I bird the duplex. I basically renovated, kept it, held it. I sold it 3 months ago. It was great. But I immediately pivoted to syndications because it tends to be the most efficient path to passive wealth. So, I started on a single apartment complex when I got into syndications, raised capital, partnered with a whole bunch of people. Now we have a 100-unit apartment complex in Augusta. From there, working with mentors, they planted a seed in my ear. Hey, you could do a fund of a fund. And we can dive deeper into what that really means with a portfolio of 3 properties. And I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. Like the leap from doing a syndication on a single property to doing a fund wasn't that big of a leap. Now, I hadn't thought of it that way initially going into it until someone actually prodded me and said, Flint, this is actually not a big deal. I think you can do it. And so I walked down that path. Within 3 weeks, I had a team built and we were putting the paperwork in place, and here we are. And I'm just about ready to close on that fund to fund.
That's amazing, man. That's really sweet. Yeah. So maybe people are familiar with the syndication, and there's a lot of similarities with the fund here. And obviously, like you said, you didn't really know how easily maybe you could just step into it. What are some, so you successfully executed a syndication. What are the differences looking back now? Yes, you're still kind of, in the process of it. What are the differences? If you could lay that out for us.
I think this is a key point that a lot of investors struggled to get their head around, because when I went from a single property, that investors wrap their head around how to do a syndication.
Yes.
Versus now I said, hey, I have this fund of a portfolio of 3 properties. They're like, oh, what does a fund mean? Do I still get cost segregation? And so the answer is, it's really no different from the investor perspective, other than with the fund, I am providing them an opportunity to diversify across 3 different properties in 3 different states.
So huge.
And from an investor perspective, it's the same PPM subscription document. It's all the same legal documents that they sign. They get equity percentage in each one of those properties, and they will get a K1 and tax advantages. It's just like owning real estate. Now they have 3 with a one-time investment and single paperwork.
Right. Yeah. And then just to make that point again, if you would, for us, Flint here, the diversification is gigantic, right?
Sorry. So on this particular one, we are spread amongst 3 different states, and we have 3 different asset classes of apartments. So not only do we have 3 different locations and economies, we have 3 different business plans. Like we have 2 Class Bs, 2 that are going through a value add renovation, and another one that's a huge Class A, just got off of the developer. So there's a lot of value add when you buy it off of the developer. Thus, it's basically 3 totally different business plans on 3 different properties, and they will cash flow all differently. One of the properties is looking to do value add and turn in 3 years and sell. I mean, boom, you get a major profit hit from an investor perspective in year 3, and then you wait till year 5, and the other 2 will sell. So it's got an interesting investment profile.
No, that's amazing, man. And then how did you and then of course that there's like kind of swells and surges of on the returns. How did you present to your investors? Because it can be kind of complicated. The
Yeah.
how did you kind of normalize or average, annualize those returns so people feel like they're getting share, that people and I'll
Yeah.
talk about this in a minute. As people come in, we'll set that idea aside. But how did you normalize returns to kind of convey that? Because even on the GP side, that can be complicated.
Yes, from the three different operators, we have three dedicated operators that are running the show on their own. They're kind of
Right.
running stovepipe on theirs, but we come in as a fund and feed financially all three of these deals. From our view, from a fund view, you can say it's all rolled into one. There is no, hey, you're getting cash flow from property A this month, property B next month, and C the third month. It doesn't work like that. It all gets rolled into one. You will get quarterly payments as if it was a single property, but there's three
Gotcha.
properties
Yeah.
feeding it. Yep. And
Yeah,
then,
right.
like I said, when you get a big sale, there's a major financial bump there in year three.
For sure. Yeah. So, and then a little more detail on that there. So the, did you have everyone, did you just do one initial raise and then basically did you do like a closed fund? You had one initial raise? Did you have multiple rounds of fundraising?
And this one, it was just one raise. And I know what
Sure.
you're talking about. You can have some funds that are more open-ended. This one's a very closed-ended fund. It is the three properties raised, do a single raise, then shut it down and we ride it out. But there are other funds that are more like evergreen funds, which are, I call it your choose your own adventure fund, where
Yes.
it's just open. And there's deals that come through. You get to choose which deals you want. You have your money in there. You opt in on a certain deal. I'm not an expert on there. That's like another 3-week process for me to figure out. I will eventually get there.
You're right.
And then there's the blind funds where you put your money in and you put your trust in the fund manager to go make sure that properties are continually coming in and there's a constant sale every year to maintain that essentially targeted 15% IRR. I think from a fund manager standpoint, you need a lot of trusted investors. You need a lot of investors. I think it takes a long time to get to that level.
Yes.
And you have to have a lot of trusted operators to make sure you have a ton of deal flow that you can bring into that deal and a ton of investors feeding it. So I think that one's probably by far the hardest.
I would agree with you on that one. With the investors that came on board here, did they know the three assets that you were targeting? Was it you that was in the deal? Like, okay, the three assets in these areas, these operators, did they know that?
Yes. So
Yeah.
our offering package, the presentation we put together showed all three. So that was a lot of work on our end because we were essentially putting a deal package together with 3 properties. So it was almost like 3 times as long, other than the financials were all rolled into one big financial.
Gigantic pitch deck, just
Yes,
like, I was like, what, another one again?
Yeah. I mean, we were 100+ pages and it's like, we got to get this down. We got to cut things out. But yeah, and on each one of those properties, here's the main operator, here's the property management that's running it. There's a different debt per property, right? All of that gets laid out for the investors.
Right. That's really good, man. So that's so interesting to obviously lay out how you guys did it and then how you saw it kind of working. And then kind of how you kind of put a bow on it, because some of this, the fun, the sweet spot of this, or the sweet, a benefit of the fund, I guess, and one of the upsides is the creativity that you can apply and employ essentially in the space. But that also comes with its downsides, because there are so many ways of doing it. You do have to put some parameters and say, okay, we're not all things are not on the table here. Here are some considerations. Here are some boundaries. What makes sense in this case. And that's talking to operators or fund managers like yourself. This is really helpful to say, hey, this is how they did it. This is the deal. This is how it happened, or the deals that went into it. This is how it happened. And these are the structures, and this is how they did it. So just hearing how someone else kind of like, winnowed down all the different choices and just went forward, that's key. That really is helpful.
So yeah, just to lay out another example for your listeners, there's a big self-storage operator that's opening up a fund, $150 million fund. And it's basically, they're going to do, like you said, a tranche 1 raise. Right now, we're going to raise, say, $30 million, and we're going to go acquire a bunch of property. But you can't raise $150 million right out of the gate in any speed and acquire $150 million worth of property. So they'll do like 1 through 4 tranches of raises, or 1 to 6, whatever it takes. But at the end of the day, it's going to close down at that $150 million mark. And for investors, it's a single input of money, and then you are diversified across $150 million worth of assets. So funds can get very unique depending on who's doing it, but I think they're advantageous for a lot of investors.
Yeah. And that's a beauty, because then you have, there's just benefits on both sides of it. You have the ready capital, you have the, maybe you have deal flow, and it's a lot more liquid. There's a lot more fluidity and, ability to respond as things change. And that's another aspect that's very beneficial here.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to pivot here a little bit, Flint, to I guess something within internally, or how your team is operated, and that is your investor base. How did you, and I always ask my guests this, how did you, or how have you engaged with, connected with, and maybe even grown your investor base? What's been some ideas and things you've done there, done well, and maybe should avoid?
Yeah, I don't think I have any unique tricks, because I basically learn from everybody else around me. My go-to is LinkedIn. I seem to find my biggest audience. I put things, whatever I put on LinkedIn, I try to put on Facebook, and I get people that flow from there. The big thing that I have done myself is I've worked with mentors, specifically Annie and Julie at Good Egg. I got involved in the real estate accelerator program.
Nice, yes.
And they have saved me so much time. It's basically they set you up with an active campaign. They give you all the drip campaigns. They tell you how to build a website appropriately, right? They give you the framework to put yourself out there online and build your database and continue to connect with people. So without them, I would be another year behind. It's just the amount of info I got, basically a huge jump start with them. So I think that's my biggest hack.
Nice, man. No, that's fantastic. And I've heard good things about their their platform,
program.
Essentially. Yeah, their program, their platform, and have the success. I've seen a few other people go through that program and do amazing things. So that's awesome to hear. And it's also awesome to share that, you went that route. How did you connect with their group initially? Did you just see online advertising, or was a person to person?
That's a great question. I don't remember how I initially heard about them. I'll be honest, that was too long ago, but sure. I somehow came across them, and I looked into it and said, wow, that looks interesting, but I'm not sure I'm willing to pay for it. And then to be honest, I failed a raise on my first deal. And that's the moment when I was like, that money I should have paid 9 months ago, when I was like, I don't know if I want to pay the mentorship. So immediately after I lost money on a deal that we couldn't close because we couldn't raise, I spent the money and got in and realized I should have done that, right?
Education, the platform, all those stuff, man. It's just like, some of us learn the hard way, maybe men are more like that, maybe us engineers, or there's another element, like we can do it. We've figured out stuff all of our lives. We don't need help.
Yeah, I don't need instructions on how to build IKEA stuff. I don't need instructions on how to capital raise, but it turns out I do.
So same here. So that's really good. So no, that's actually really good, man. So thank you for sharing that piece.
Yeah.
What are some things you, I guess, as there's a couple of questions I like to ask here. I think you just answered it. Like, what are some things you would have done differently now that you've been in the space for a little bit? It sounds like that would be one of them. Or something else that you would maybe do differently now, looking back with hindsight. So the benefit of hindsight.
Oh God, so much. Yeah, on that first deal that failed, it wasn't just capital raise, it was so many other things as well. But yes, to hit the point on the capital raise, if you are an aspiring syndicator and you find property but you don't have investors, don't think if you bring an opportunity that you're going to find investors. You have to have them in your back pocket already.
So true.
You can't, it's not if you build it, they will come. That doesn't work. The second thing I learned is, partnerships are super important. I think that's obvious. And you really learn about partnerships when you get into the heat of the battle. But we jumped into this Class C super heavy lift property, and we realized we couldn't pull investors because, one, we were a new team of
Yeah.
syndicators.
Mhm.
It was a heavy lift, and two, this is an odd one. It was too small. It was a
Wow.
23
Okay.
unit, if I remember correctly, 2.3 million. We didn't have to raise much money, but we still couldn't. But when we brought in some bigger investors that were like, yeah, we can pull this off, they looked at it and said, no, it's too small.
Yeah.
The reason being, economies of scale on something like a 23 unit aren't that great, and there's higher risk. When one person moves out, your percentage of loss in rent is higher than if you have a 100 unit, right?
Precisely.
So
Yeah. Just like a single family, what's the vacancy when single family, when in a single family, 1/1, versus 1/100, just that fraction,
Yep.
scales, that ratio scales with the number of units you have under management.
Yeah. And actually, another thing to note on that is, in this inflationary period, rents grow with inflation. And when you constantly have tenants moving out month over month, you're increasing rent with inflation. So you are riding that curve pretty well. When you have a single family home and there's inflation happening, you're stuck waiting until that year ends before you get to bump the rent. So
that's a brilliant point there, Flint.
Yeah.
I love that. That's such a good point.
Ride that inflation wave with bigger property.
Absolutely. Give us an embarrassing story. This I know this is sometimes it's funny, sometimes not. Give us an embarrassing story from your it could be real estate, maybe from your professional life, that you would mind sharing with the audience here. Hopefully it's funny, but it could just be embarrassing too.
Man, I almost need to be prepped on that one. I don't know if you sent me something that says,
I did not. I did not.
I got it. Oh, I might have to dig.
Okay.
I think the most recent thing, because I'm an engineer and program manager, I am not a sales guy. I am not marketing. I am learning on the fly, and I do stupid stuff. There's something as simple as just getting your active campaign set up, and when you send out an email blast to 100 investors and you just have something screwed up in there, like a typo, that's like, oh God, and you can't pull it back, right?
Yes, sir.
I was feeling spicy one night on some letter I was sending out to everyone, my entire list.
Yeah.
And I decided to get funny with it, but it was one of those where I'm like punch drunk at 11 p.m. at night, just putting things that at that hour is kind of funny, but in reality, in a professional letter, shouldn't be put there. So
yes.
I was like, that night I was like, yeah, this is fine, and hit send, just trying to be different. But I realized the next morning I woke up and I was like, that was stupid.
Yes.
I don't think I hurt anything in the long run. And for the most part, I think in general, if you're being a capital raiser, you almost get like a third of your investors will open up emails and read them. It's hard, but that's I'm being told by others, they're like, oh, a third is really good. So at least only a third of my investor base saw it, and it wasn't that bad. But in the end, it's like, maybe you should sit on a letter or something for a day and reread it before you send it to that many people.
Yeah, that's really key. That's a huge thing. And I'm working on, just personally, I'm working on my active campaign, drip campaign and some other things as well here. So I guess that is I was going to ask you next for your recommendation for when you're sending out, because I have a terrible thing with making terrible typos. I drop entire words. I read it 5 times. I drop like 10 words, it's terrible. And I'm like, good God, like, John, like, did you not go to school? Can you not spell? Like, yes, I can spell. But I literally have this blindness. I just cannot see that I dropped these words. So
I do the same thing. Maybe it's an engineering thing. Like, is dropped. I just skip right over it.
But what's your process? That's good. Grammarly.
Get Grammarly. I pay for Grammarly. It's always saving my butt when I care if I need something to be appropriately written.
Beautiful. No, that's good, Act. So, think about all the nuggets you've dropped here, Flint. I mean, so like you went with the Good Egg team, then you're actually within your CRM, you're using Active Campaign in this case. And also, obviously make sure you're in appropriate mental and health space before you send a message, and then obviously then you use some checkers again. So all those things are key. I mean, I know you just kind of like drip them there for us, but like all those things are important to ensure a high quality communication at all times with your investor,
Yes.
which is obviously the lifeblood of this business, right? I mean, obviously deals and you need your team, but all the lifeblood, of course, is your investor base, and always you're presenting yourself in a highly professional and engaging and all those ways. So that's really important.
You may be funny in person, but funny in writing may not come through, right?
Just maybe just leave that talent to somebody else. This is not what you do.
Some people can be funny in writing. I don't know that I am.
Yeah, I think I have a little tendency to try to edge toward that direction too. And like sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's hit, and sometimes like it's very, very not
Total
funny.
miss.
So leave that one alone.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic, man. So final closing comments here. What's the best place for people to connect with you and your team, and share anything that you have going on now or looking into the future for goals? So I'd love to have my guests share those things too.
So first off, I'll say where I'm going. I'm challenging my investor base. So here's another nugget. Went from a single property to a fund, and now I'm going to build to rent, which is probably another episode, or we can extend this another 20 minutes talking about that. But I am challenging my investors every step of the way because I have to educate them on a new thing. But that's the new thing I'm doing is build to rent. It's phenomenal. It's picking up speed. It's basically a portfolio of single family homes. We build ground up these starter homes that for the purpose of renting. And it comes with all the amenities of Class A apartments. So we'll have a pool, we'll have a park. It's meant to be those young millennials or zennials that want to have a little starter home feel, but it's
And so you'll have a community then, of course.
So we build, we legitimately build a housing community. And it's a totally different fund profile and all that, right? We're cutting dirt, we're building roads and putting all the utilities in. But that's my next move. That'll be happening soonish to fall time-ish. But if people want to get a hold of me, and I'm going to do some other single properties that'll trickle through with some other partners. So if you're interested, it is find me at Vestus Capital. It's VESTUS capital.com. And you can connect with me from there, or I'm on LinkedIn, Flint Jamison, LinkedIn/Flint Jamison. That's where I'm super active.
Just so you know, folks here listening, Flint has an awesome LinkedIn profile. I see his stuff go by all the time, and his website. I was checking out his website before we jumped on here. Very nice website. So all those things are very polished and they're very engaging. So you'll probably, when you get on there, you'll probably want to check out what he has to offer and subscribe to different things he has on the docket there.
All right. Thank you.
Beautiful. All right. Everyone here, ladies and gentlemen, at the Investing Stuff You Should Know podcast, thank you for listening to another episode. Maybe you noticed we've shortened it up just a little bit, tried to be a little more focused, a little more right to the beat of what people come here to listen for. And I know Flint has dropped some excellent nuggets. So thank you again, and see you next time.